start talking, and hopefully we'll get some people popping up here on the side, and
yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, get a chance to see what's going on there. And I gotta turn this down so I'm getting an echo, and there's going to be a bit of a delay, so gotta try to manage that delay. But there you go. So funny. Hey, welcome to the Turn 4 Podcast live event. As always, thank you for joining, whether you're a new listener or a regular. We appreciate that you're here. My regular co-host, Tim Reiner, is having some technical difficulties, so hopefully Tim will be able to join us at some point, or maybe Tim's watching on the YouTube live stream. That's right. We got a live stream going on here with our first ever live event. And, looking forward to getting some engagement here with our listeners and see what we can come up with here. So, hey, we got a special guest tonight. Name is Bryan Friedrich, but you probably know him on Twitter as 500 Indy 1911. And the reason why Bryan is here is because we're going to talk about Indianapolis. We're going to talk about great winners at the Speedway and how some of those winners stack up based on certain levels of criteria. So I'm going to turn it over to Bryan. Bryan, hey, tell us about this spreadsheet, why you built it.
So it kind of started like most things that I do, kind of a smaller idea, and then it kind of blossomed over time. So the origin of it was, so I'm a big Unser senior fan. And then one of my best friends, who I've known since I was, 5 or 6 years old. He's a big Rick Mears fan. And just kind of in passing, we were talking about looking forward to this May. I think it was right around the time that Unser Sr. passed away. So I was making an argument that I think Unser Sr. is the best Indianapolis 500 driver of all time. And obviously he wanted to defend Rick Mears. So, but how do you compare, 4-time winners, especially with a big, disparity in a number of starts. So it literally just started out as me just comparing Unser Sr. with Rick Mears. And then it kind of grew to just do the 4-time winners. So I, added AJ and Elio, and then just compared, those 4, and then added more statistical categories. And then it just kind of blossomed into this monstrosity that I just can't seem to quit. So, so I think long-term goal, I would obviously, love to have all, I think there's 784 starters in the Indianapolis 500 ever. So ideally I'd like to be able to add all 784, but it just takes so long, and, to add, even just one driver. So, so I just started with that, and then I decided to add the WIBC 33, which was a group of drivers that a lot of people in 2016, Robin Miller, I think, was on the panel. Mike Thompson was on it, Donald Davidson. So they came up with 11 rows of 3 for the 100th. So I added the WIBC 33. And then for context, I started adding drivers like Danica Patrick, Will Power, the guys that weren't in the WIBC 33, Alexander Rossi, Danny Sullivan, Dan Gurney, Rex Mays, Connor Daly, just to kind of put in perspective both modern drivers and historically good drivers, to see how they stack up in a historical sense with both the 4-time winners and the WIBC 33. So it just grew kind of out of control. And then, the more numbers I added, the more numbers I wanted to add. And then I had all this debate going back and forth about, like what statistical categories should have weight and what should have less weight. So I actually ended up making this down here. Hope everybody can see it.
Oh yeah.
This section here is what I consider, I guess, to be, the most important, quote unquote, stats.
Okay, so let's start right there. So obviously
Okay.
we're weighting heavily number of wins.
Yeah.
All right, you're putting wins at 40%. Is there any argument to suggest starts is a better look at that, or front row starts is a better look at that?
Right. So, I think obviously, and like I think anybody would agree, the point of the Indianapolis 500 is to win it from a driver's perspective. So I think the wins obviously need to be, like the heaviest weighted. And I really went back and forth on having any value to starts. So like when you look at somebody like AJ Foyt with 35 starts, or you look at, Bill Holland, who had 5, should I'll make AJ Foyt get added bonus points, so to speak, for starts, but I think there is a way to kind of equate that down the road. So, so like if you do like top 10 starts, top 5 finishes, top 3s, top 10s, if you rack those up, it's going to be kind of like a result, like more or less, like based off of starts. So I didn't really want to add any type of weight to starts in general. And again, I guess to give a little background on this is like a completely live thing. So, so if I were to say that we want to have starts be weighted, then it'll automatically adjust everything up here as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we can immediately say, so like, so let's say that we do add like a 5% weight to starts, and then just knock down wins down to 35. So we're still at 100% or 1.0. But you'll start seeing kind of how quickly that'll change. So like Al Unser would still be number 1, I guess, in this formula in mine, who was also number 1, by the way, in the WIBC 33.
Right.
And then you'll start seeing some movement kind of down the line here. Like when you see drivers like Bill Holland, Bill Vukovic, like Parnelli Jones only had 7 starts, like Jimmy Murphy, guys like Dan Weldon. So, so I didn't really want to necessarily add any type of weight to starts.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because I think that it can get translated through, like these other statistical categories.
Sure. Hey, so let's take that out. Let's take the starts back out.
Okay.
And then let's go back up to see let's see where your formula disagrees. And the first one that I see there with the disagreement with the WIBC is Elio Castroneves.
Yeah. So at the time that they did the WIBC 33, he was obviously just a 3-time winner. So I think that actually says a lot that they thought so highly of him, but like put him at 7, even as just a 3-time winner. So, but guys like Scott Dixon is another example where like WIBC had him at 24, and almost every time I look at Scott Dixon's numbers, and granted he's had 6 starts, since they did that, but his numbers are incredible. And like we can go through a little bit of detail too about just how good historically Scott Dixon is, which isn't a surprise. I mean,
yeah, let's talk about Dixon, because Dixon just has 1 win, and I think that's a surprise to a lot of people. I don't think that's what anybody would expect, given what a great champion Scott Dixon has been since his time in IndyCar.
Yeah. So if we look at Scott Dixon, he's had 19 starts. He's going to make his 20th, like a week and a half, but only 1 win. And obviously that came in 2008, 12, like years ago. So he actually won in like the first half of his career and hasn't won in the second half, like as far as the Indianapolis 500 is concerned. But if you start looking at his other numbers, like 6 front row starts, like 4 poles, which is as much as Elio. I believe that's tied for second all time is 4 poles. He's had, So 12 of his 19 starts have been in the top 10. He's got an average start of 7.32, which is insane. So I can just rank this from a historical standpoint, and kind of where that number falls historically. And then this is where you'll start seeing some skews that kind of can point to how great this number is. So, here's starts 6, 7, 15. So like Rick Mears had obviously an incredible starting average, but Dixon, like with 19 starts, started 7.32 on average. So that's kind of a big number. But then even like Helio, he's another guy too that statistically are just incredible, like anomalies almost. So his average start is an 8.1, but Dixon's a 7.32. And I don't think that he gets quite enough credit for how good he is there at qualifying. So like we've seen it so far in practice this week,
Yep.
and he was on the pole last year and was kind of the overwhelming favorite before, he kind of ran out of fuel, I believe, at the first yellow. But yeah, he's historically great there. He's had, 5 top 3s. So he's had 4 either second or third place finishes, 8 top 5s and 12. He's had 12 top 10s with an average finish of 10.63. So if we look at even just his average finish, from historically speaking, hopefully that beeping or that noise isn't too loud.
No, it's not too bad. I
Good.
don't think it is. Yeah.
So where is he? There he is. Yeah. So he's kind of, that looks like maybe 12th or 13th all time. Like at least according to this. But then again, he's got 19 starts. But then, which can also shed some light on how good Al Unser was. It in 27 starts, he averaged, a 10.22. So like the smaller the scale. So I think Bill Holland's first 4 races, he finished first, second, or no, I think it was second, first, second. And then like Ted Horn obviously is a guy too that always gets brought up. He was actually the 5th guy that I added to this spreadsheet, again, to kind of prove a point to a friend. His numbers are outlandish, and he kind of never gets, mentioned so much in a historical standpoint because he never won. But his finishes, he had 10 starts, 9 of them he finished in the top 5. So, and another thing that makes Ted Horn's results so incredible is that his starts straddled World War II. So he was as good before World War II as he was after. But he was just never in a position to win the race. But so he'll kind of pop up pretty often in the numbers as being kind of an outlandish anomaly. But if we go back to Dixon, 63% of his starts, he's finished in the top 10. And then this has been a big number for him for a while. So he's at 570 right now in laps led. So I believe starting 2 years ago, he could technically pass Al Unser as leading the most laps. But nobody wants to lead in like the modern Indianapolis 500 era.
Right.
So it'll be difficult for him, but he's really not that far. And he could do it, which is incredible too. But it's also incredible to think that Ralph De Palma had that record up until Al Unser broke it, I think, in the 80s. So, but his laps led per start at 30. It's a really solid number, especially for that many starts. And he's tied with Tony Kanaan with 14 for the most races led. So in 14 of his 19 starts, he led at some point.
Gotcha. Hey, we got some folks watching on the YouTube channel, a few folks here watching. So go ahead and pop in some questions on that side if you want to ask any questions of Bryan, and we'll take a look at how it stacks up against how these rankings are listed in Bryan's sheet. So go ahead and post in some questions if you have any, and we'll be sure to get that out there. So appreciate you joining in. Hey, Bryan, so you did this because the point was you wanted to try to prove that Al Senior, right, was the best of the four timers.
Yes.
So what do you think? What's the biggest driver for that?
For my point that like Al Senior is the best of all time.
Yeah.
Um, Multiple different things. If you just look at his straight numbers, 27 starts is really, it's great. His obvious 4 wins. He was never a good qualifier necessarily. He only got one pole. But if you look at his top 10 starts, he started in the top 10, 17 of his 27 starts, which is pretty incredible. But even more so, this is the number that just blows my mind. He's had 11 top threes. I mean, that's incredible. I don't think anybody else is even close. Yeah, so Mears had 7. So for an era too, and I guess we'll kind of get to it as we scroll to the right, but he just always finished the race. He always brought the car home, which is one reason why I think that he was always kind of the go-to guy for Penske, especially in '87. When he filled in and he ultimately won his 4th. It just shows how consistent and solid of a driver he was. So he didn't, he never had the best average start, the best average finish, but he was kind of always around, and it was always available, thereabouts, kind of at the end of the race. So he's still number 1 with the most laps led at 644. He led races 11 of his 27 starts. And a lot of these too, there are always going to be stories that aren't told by the number, or like by the numbers. So, I think Al Unser's last race, he finished 3rd. He was competitive throughout his entire career, which I think is a huge testament for having that long of a career and being competitive. We can talk about AJ Foyt in a little while. And I know there's a ton of diehard AJ Foyt fans. Like, one of the reasons why I got into IndyCar and Indianapolis 500 is my dad, who is a huge AJ Foyt fan. So, but if you really look at AJ Foyt's numbers, his last 13 or 14 starts, he was never really around, other than that time where he qualified on the front row, I believe in the early 90s.
So who does your friend think is number 1?
He's a big Rick Mears guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and he just has a smaller sample size, but it's still a significant sample size. So let me go back and put all the 4-time winners up here at the top.
True Penske guy too. Always brought it home.
Yep.
Right. Didn't wreck a lot of equipment.
Nope, he didn't. Although he does have one of the funniest stories ever about when he realized that he needs to give up IndyCar racing.
Yeah.
I love that story. Yeah, so he had 4 starts, or 15 starts, obviously 4 wins, but 11 times he started on the front row. So there's really no debate on who the best qualifier ever is at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and it's like Rick Mears. And he only didn't start in the top 10 once of his 15 starts, which is crazy. And I don't know if I've ever really realized that number, because I can't think of the one time that he didn't start in the top 10. There is kind of an interesting stat for him being such a great qualifier. He actually did not qualify his first attempt in 1977. So, and there's a couple interesting examples of what turned out to be legendary drivers that failed to qualify in their first attempt, but it's really interesting that Rick Mears was one of them. But a 4.47 average start, 11.2 average finish. He had 9 top 5s, all of which, or I guess he had 9 top 10s, all of which were top 5s, 7 top 3s. So almost 50% of the time he finished in the top 3. That's crazy.
So tell me why he's not the best.
I think there is something to the longevity of Al Unser's career, and the fact that he was competitive throughout his entire run there. I don't think there's any doubt that if Rick Mears would have kept going, that he would have probably had the same success that he had shown in the previous 15 starts. And
Rick Mears retired in what, 2001?
No, he retired in 93.
Oh,
yeah, I think his last race
that's
was
right.
90.
Yeah, 91.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, 91
Yeah.
was his last attempt.
91
the
was his
last time at Indianapolis, where he would have been a 5-time. So
I think he made a start in 91. He might have, his last race might have been 92.
There you go. Yeah.
So
he missed the Penske heyday, like with the Beast and
right.
the
Yeah.
Miss, but he missed that, by 10 years.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine Rick Mears in the Beast in 1994.
I don't think he would have hit the wall leading.
No, and yeah, but he could have broke the track record probably. I mean, it's they didn't have slouches in that car by any means. Unser Jr. and Emerson Fittipaldi are fantastic, but just Rick Mears just seemingly had that perfect smooth line and could find some speed that seemingly that other drivers couldn't find. Yeah, so it would have been really interesting to see, like what he would have done in that Beast in 94. So yeah, I can see, and that's kind of the thing. Like we could go through all four and make a case for all four, that they are the best of all time, and like we haven't fully talked about Elio yet, but I mean, I could make the argument that Elio's the second best all time right now. And he's still got some starts left in him, which is really kind of it's a crazy thing. Like he's had 15 top 10 starts in 21. He's had 15 top 10s in his 21 starts. That's just a crazy number. So
Spencer just chipped in. Thanks, Spencer, for that. 1992 was Mears' last race, and Foyt
92. Yeah.
Retired on pole day in 1993. Unser's was 93 as well.
Yeah.
Spencer, type in the comments section who you think is the best out of these winners. They don't have to be out of the top four, but punch in who you think is the best winners out of these.
Yeah.
They don't have to be 4-timers, is what I guess I'm saying. So I guess what I'm surprised at is the number of starts that Elio Castroneves has. And is he the last back-to-back winner?
Yeah, he won in 2001, 2002. Yeah, he's the last one.
Hey, look who it is. It's Tim Reiner. Hey, Timmy.
Hello, Dan. Hello, Brian. How are you?
Hi, Tim. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm so good. Thanks for joining the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm late. We had a power outage here that just finally came back. The power's been out for 3 or 4 hours here. So,
oh, wow.
I'm here. So,
glad you could join us, Timmy.
I'm glad I'm here. So, where were you guys?
So we were talking about, we talked a little bit about Scott Dixon only being a one-time winner, but he's got amazing stats with his finishes. And then we were just going through quickly Rick Mears versus Al Unser. Brian believes that Al Unser is the best of the 4-timers and even ahead of Rick Mears. And Rick Mears has got some pretty amazing stats in terms of watching his average finishes and his average starts, number of starts, or his average starting position, right, Brian? I'm sorry, because I'm trying to watch the chat and talk at the same time, so I can't.
I got you. What was your question then?
So the differences between Rick Mears and Al Unser Sr.
Okay. I want to go back to Scott Dixon, though, before you get into that, because I was looking at Scott Dixon earlier as I was looking at the spreadsheet and kind of going through it. And I saw Scott Dixon ranked 3rd overall based on your weighted averages. Is that correct? Or was I looking at that incorrectly?
I have him based on the weighted averages. I have him 6th.
Okay. You have him 6th.
Yeah, which is really kind of incredible for just being a one-time winner and for how heavily the wins are weighted, which kind of like reflects how great his other, stats are.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing for a one-time winner,
Yeah.
that he's that far up. But his average finish, I see looking at the sheet, is almost just over 10, right? So right around the 10th spot, 10th, 11th spot, which is really good to see.
Yeah.
And then top three, 26% of the time, top five, 42, and so on and so forth. So that's really good. Now you guys were on to Al Unser and AJ Foyt.
But he's only got one win, which is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
So Spencer is on here. Hey, Brian, Spencer agrees with you.
Does he? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Spencer and I talk a lot on Twitter. He's actually a great source of information for me. Like, he's really interested in like all this like historical statistics for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So he's been a great source for me to kind of like bounce ideas off of, and he'll give me some information. And so he definitely knows this stuff. So like I'm glad that he agrees with me.
So one of the points that he's making here is that Mears didn't win with multiple teams.
Oh, Spencer? Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
Is it?
I think so. Well, like Mears, all four of his wins were obviously with Penske, who's like the most dominant team in the history of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where like Al Unser kind of did it with multiple teams over multiple decades. And he was kind of in a weird, like he had a really weird IMS career. Like he was a defending IndyCar champion who didn't have a ride the next year. I forget what year that was. Spencer might know that, which is crazy. So that'd be like Alex Palou not having a ride this year.
Yeah.
He wasn't even, he and in like 1987, he didn't even have a ride. And, he got assigned after the first weekend of qualifying, and like he won in a car that was in a hotel lobby in Pennsylvania, like, the week before. He's just, there's just so many stories about Al Unser that, in my opinion, make him out to be the best there ever was. But I think that it's a very thin margin at the top 4 or 5 where, anybody I think could make the argument of any 4 of those could be the best all time. But for my personal thing, I think it's Al Unser. Plus, like my license plate says Al Senior 4X, so I kind of have to stick with that. So I can't go around driving that and say Rick Mears is the best of all time.
Yeah, I've seen that on Twitter. I've definitely seen photos of the vehicle and the plate there, along with the flag and everything else you have going on at the house.
Yeah.
So you guys probably already went through some of this. Did you kind of go into how this all started and how it all became? Because I know Dan and I debate quite a bit about different things in IndyCar, whether it's, should there be more ovals? What are the best circuits? When was the heyday? We kind of go through that and talk a lot about that. And I think this sort of originated, if I understand, from you and a friend kind of talking about who is the best overall. And you said, I'm going to throw this sheet together in order to, sort of prove my point. Now, going into that, did you think Al Unser Sr. was the best at that time, or did it?
Yeah. So I had Al Sr. and then my buddy had Rick Mears. So I just knew that if I could put the numbers down historically, that it would kind of pan out that way. And I try to be down here with the statistical thing. I guess I don't know if you've seen this part yet, but so all of this number, and I guess I should have said this at the beginning. So this final weighted score column is, and if you could see at the top here, this massive formula. So all of that is, it's just kind of a number that gets derived from whatever the weights are of these statistical categories down here. So, and it's kind of an arbitrary number, but at least it puts all the drivers that are on this sheet, obviously under the same scrutiny, more or less. And then this is an automatic, ranking of this number based off of these stats. So if we want to go through, we could move Rick Mears to number 1 of all time if, we add more weight to polls, more weight to top 10 starts. So there is a way to kind of fudge these a little bit to kind of support certain drivers. The weird thing is that the combination of these fudges, which I've spent a ton of time just kind of randomly putting in numbers of weights, it's really hard to knock Al Unser off the top. Like, you almost have to do it meaningfully in a way that, like, so like Al Unser only had 1 pole, like Rick Mears had 6. So you would have to put a lot of weight on poles to help Mears. But you could make the argument, I've talked to a lot of guys that know a hell of a lot more about the history of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway than I do, that literally claim that starting position should have no weight, that a pole should have no weight whatsoever. And that like a top 10 finish should be like massively weighted. Or if you even add 1% to poles, then a top 10 finish should be 10%. So
yeah, and I think that makes sense for sure, right? I think where you start, well, sort of kind of gives you an idea of how good the setup obviously was for the qualification and what you can do over the 4 laps around IMS. But at the end of the day, I think if you look at finish, which obviously you've got that weighted 40% on the wins column there, and then top 10 finishes, top 5 finishes, you got some weighted there, which seems accurate to me. It seems like the right way to do it. Yeah. The one thing that I was looking at earlier was the laps led per start. I thought that was weighted at 2%. I don't know if that should have a weight or shouldn't, but laps led per start and even laps completed have 0 weight in that. But I don't know how that sort of skews once you kind of mess with those and say, oh, let's put a little more weight in that and see how the numbers sort of fall out. But based on your current ranking, it looks like the 4 winners that have 4 wins each are the ones that did bubble up to the top. Is that correct?
Yep, they did. Yep. And then it goes in that order: Unser, Foyt, Elio, and Mears. Which I don't know. Like, I'm such a numbers guy. It's really difficult to argue with numbers. So when I see that, but in my brain, I don't put AJ Foyt ahead of Rick Mears.
Oh wow!
And I really don't put AJ Foyt ahead of Elio. Like, of the 4, I would think that AJ's 4th.
Wow.
Yeah. But if we go back
you're gonna need to drill into that.
I know, that's why I'm trying to skip by that. I don't want to.
You're gonna need to drill into that.
Foyt fans, yeah, but you can't like make that argument to like a diehard AJ Foyt fan. Like, so they don't want to hear it.
Right. So okay. So hold on. Let me get set. So because this just came up. So Spencer is talking about Unser's schedule getting in 86 cut back and Rick's crash. He said he had to look it up because he wasn't alive. That's one thing. But so here's the deal. Tim and I are of an age where I'm just going to speak for myself here. So I don't really remember too much of watching AJ Foyt race or Rick Mears. I'm 47 years old. I really became an IndyCar fan in 1989.
Okay.
So I don't really remember a lot of AJ Foyt racing, Rick Mears racing. I don't remember Al Unser Sr. really racing either, right? To me, the guys that drove and Mario's kind of at the tail end for that one as well, at that same era for me. The guys that I see are Michael, Elio, Al Jr., some of those guys. So, but with that said, even having not watched them, AJ Foyt is an icon, right?
Yeah.
And
no doubt.
He really is. So, but I've never really considered it from the perspective of was he really that great at the Speedway? He has 4 wins, but how was he otherwise? So that's kind of mind blowing to me by saying that, because how many starts does he have? 35?
35. Yeah, I don't think anybody will beat that either.
But is that what's killing his number in your opinion?
It shouldn't, because it's really not killing his number, because according to this formula, he's second. So, but again, there's, the numbers only can tell one part of the story. So if you literally go back to AJ Foyt's career, which there's some really interesting stories about the start of his career. So his first time ever at the track was in 1955. And he said that he sat in turn 2 for the Indianapolis 500 in 1955, which is an infamous race where a legend that we can look at numbers of, Bill Vukovich, died on actually lap 56, which if you're a numbers person like I am, that's a very interesting thing. So Foyt sat in turn 2, which is where the wreck was, where like Vukovich died in 55. He was a rookie in 58, and then, or 59, I think 58. And then he won his first in 61, and then he won in 64, and then he won in 67. So, and then he didn't win his fourth until 1977. So from 1967 until 1993, if you take away, which is, you really shouldn't do this, obviously, from a statistical standpoint, but if you take away 1967 on back and only look at his numbers from 68 to the time he retired in 93, or his last start in 92, I guess just to say, and especially post 1980, his numbers were not good. So, and actually, I can show kind of the brains behind this a little bit. So this is what feeds this, like the statistical stuff. So Foyt was one of the first ones I did. So there's 61, 64, 67. And then he had this great little stretch here where he finished third, second, first in 77, 78, 79, and then starting in 80 until he retired, his finishes were 14, 13, 19, 31, 6, 28, 24, 19, 26. And then he ended relatively strong, I guess, 5, 6, 28, and ninth.
Wow.
There's, and I'm pretty sure it's AJ Foyt, but a friend of mine who knows way more about the history of this place than I do. I'm pretty sure it was Foyt where he told me that he didn't lead a lap in the 80s.
Oh, interesting.
It was either Foyt or Mario. It might have been Mario, actually. Actually, if Spencer, if you're still listening, maybe you know that one because he's a big lap leader guy. Spencer is. Yeah, but Foyt just kind of wasn't around like much. He had that great start to his career, and if you shrink that sample size down from the time that he was a rookie to 1977, that's it's a not insignificant number of years. I guess that's 19 starts, which is where Dixon is. So if you compare the first 19 starts of Foyt to Dixon, then you have a much more, I think, favorable outlook of Foyt. But yeah, it's just his second half of his career, he just kind of wasn't around where all the other guys were. So like Unser was always around, like Elio's always been there. And like Mears was as good in 78 and 79 as he was in 92. So that consistency, I think, does have value, but I don't know how to add numerical value to that.
I got you.
So maybe a statistician could help me out with that, other than if I just literally cut numbers out, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah, but you look at win percentage, right? So AJ Foyt, 11.43% of the time. Rick Mears is way up there at 26.67. When I looked at your chart, Billy Vukovich has the best percentage, right, at 40%. But then you look at JPM and you look at Jacques Villeneuve, their win percentage is 33.33, right? So they did really well in the years that they were there. So I would anticipate if you took that into account for the number of times they actually started in their win percentage, you would have others kind of start bubbling up based on that percentage, because and you just sorted it on that. You can see how the folks sort of lay out on that. And I thought Jacques Villeneuve was in there at the 33.3, but I don't see that he bubbled up there. But I'm probably looking at an older version.
Yeah, I might have taken him out. But I think he only had 3 starts. I think Spencer would know that. I think he only had 3 starts, 1-1.
Yeah, he had 3 starts, 1-1, according to your sheet.
He finished second, I think, once too.
Potentially top 3 finishes twice. So he was in the top 3 twice, and then top 5 twice, and top 10 twice. So I'm not sure where his other one was at, but that's a great record. If you can come in and you can win one out of 3 times. And then even what JPM did, he did it 2 out of 6 times is really impressive to me.
Yeah, and he won 2 of his first 3.
Yeah, which is amazing, right? Totally amazing to come in and do that.
And he could have won his second. If you remember that really good battle with him and Will Power, and then was it Power? No, that was 15, 14. And then that race, he was there or thereabouts there near the end too. But and then so if you talk about the win percentage too, like, and then I sorted it down, you have to scroll down a little bit to find Foyt. But obviously with 35 starts, even with 4 wins, it's only 11.43. But I guess Al Unser wasn't much higher than that. Rossi is still up there, but he's only got 6 starts. Yeah, but
out of the 4 winners, Rick Mears has the best win percentage, right? But
yes,
that goes to your point earlier. He was with Team Penske all those years, right? So he was with a great team. So you would expect better things in a shorter amount of time, given the same amount of talent from driver to driver.
So Bobby Unser was his teammate for some of that time at Penske as well. Where's Bobby Unser here?
His numbers are actually really impressive too. Like I've always been a Bobby Unser fan, but like it wasn't until I did this with a lot of guys where I realized really, like how good they were from a historical standpoint. So he won 15%. A really interesting, 14. Like he was a much better qualifier than I think a lot of people give him credit for too.
Foyt led 3 times for 32 laps in 1982. Thanks, Spence.
Oh,
Spencer's all over the.
He's great.
Great job. Great job.
Well, then I think it's Mario who never led a lap in the 80s, which is just a crazy stat.
That is amazing.
That is crazy.
Most laps led and
Mario. It wasn't
and never
Mario.
A victory. Would that be Michael Andretti?
Yes,
it is. Okay.
So an interesting thing with Michael, who's my favorite IndyCar driver of all time, by the way.
Mine too. Yes. Let's give it up.
I love it.
I love it. Yes.
So the WIBC 33, we can go back to that too. One of the kind of prerequisites that the panel agreed on was that everybody needs to have a win. So the one driver that made the WIBC 33 in 2016 without a win was Michael Andretti, and they put him 33rd. Yes, but he's led the most laps without a win. And I'm pretty sure he's quite a bit of ways ahead of second still. But so let's go ahead and do that WIBC 33 sort. Because there's some interesting stuff in here. Like, well, you'll see some kind of variances because they didn't add a non-winner, where like mine did. And really it's pretty close. Like if you kind of go down, like, like they have Vukovic at 8 or 6, which it's really hard to argue with that, but the numbers show 17. But I have no qualms. I mean, if anything, I could see him being 5th. Like, and then there's kind of a big discrepancy of Johnny Rutherford. I think Johnny Rutherford's career is a little bit overrated, even though he does have 3 wins. So he won 74, 76, and 80. But he kind of had an interesting career too at IMS.
Hey, do you have another 3-time winner that might be a little overrated?
I'm
thinking back to our conversation last week when we were in the car.
Yeah. Dario Franchitti, in my opinion, and again, it's hard to, he's a 4-time IndyCar champion, 3-time Indianapolis 500 champion. So I don't want to like diss the guy, and I like him. Like he's a nice guy. He's an awesome personality, but in his 3 wins, he never took the checkered flag under green. So
Timmy, did you know that?
I did not know that. That's an interesting stat,
isn't it? So
I did not. I was there for one of those.
Yeah,
for one of those wins in the rain.
Yep.
But I guess I never realized any of his.
And I think that's just a wild stat. So I don't want to say that he was handed any of them. Like I don't want any of that. But I think that's just a crazy stat. But if you go through Dario's his numbers are crazy. Like he's really, really, really good, and he's got a relatively smaller sample size too. Let Where's he at? I'm on the W. Yeah, here he is. So he only had 10 starts, which I think is a kind of a sweet spot from a numerical standpoint. Because it's easy, or like it gets interesting when you have someone that has like 10, 11, 12 starts, but is very successful, to compare him to somebody like Unser with 27 and Foyt with 35. So it's a really good, like, head to head, interesting thing. So in his 10 starts, he had four front row starts, a really good average start, 6 top 10 finishes, average finish in the single digits. 60% of the time he finished in the top 10. He didn't lead a lot of laps. And that's another thing too about Elio. Elio has 21 starts and has only led 325. Dario Franchitti has 10 starts and has led more laps. An interesting thing with Elio is that he just doesn't lead. And that's a very much of like a Rick Mears style of a 500-mile race. So Mears was kind of in a more dominant era too, where it didn't hurt you to lead as much. But in 21 starts, Elio only leading 325 laps is very indicative of his driving style and his mentality in a 500-mile race. He just always is right there. And then he waits till the last 20 laps and does his thing.
And his average finish is really good for 21 starts too.
Oh, it's phenomenal. Yeah. That's a crazy number for having 21 starts and averaging like an 8 and, like an 8th place finish.
How many laps has Michael led?
I don't know that number off the top of my head. 431.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which is,
and little Marco 141.
Yeah.
Tim's a Marco fan.
Is he?
I'm an Andretti fan, so I root for all the Andrettis, and so Marco's next on the list. And there's great promise when he entered the series, and he did well there for a while, and then he kind of fell off. But I've got a few predictions on him for the 500 this year. I said in one of our shows, in one of our early shows, when we were looking at the season, we had to predict who was going to take pole and who was going to win. I still have Marco on the pole for this Indy 500. Now, what is it going to happen? Who knows, right? And you never know what's going to happen tomorrow and the day after. And
it'll be a crazy weekend
with the conditions. He won't.
Yeah, I would bet he won't either. Yeah, I'm actually, here's a kind of a funny story. I think I've only been blocked by one person on Twitter, and it's Marco Andretti.
For what?
It was so long ago. It was probably 5 years ago. He used to do, well, I don't know now because he blocked me, but he used to do like on flights, he would be like, "Hey, I'm on a 2-hour flight. Ask me a question."
I remember that. Yep.
So I asked him, it was a smart ass question. It was something about like, is that plane drivable or is it undrivable? Like, he famously always claims his car is undrivable. And then he responded and with something, and then I don't know, it just kind of like, I think I said something about like, you must have like nudged your front wing and now it's undrivable, or like, so, yeah. And then he blocked me and I haven't talked to him since. But but he's actually, kind of side note, he's really good at IMS too, and I have him on here just for kind of a comparison sake, because I'm a big Andretti fan too. I love Mario, love Michael. But I don't know, I'm not a big Marco.
I was there the year that I got to get to Spencer's comment. I was there the year that Sam Hornish beat Marco.
Yeah,
the 500. Yeah,
that was Marco's rookie year, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Spencer says he's leaning toward VK for the pole.
I agree.
I like that.
Yeah, I agree. On Tuesday, he was the best car that I saw in person. Like, he could lead the pack and then for multiple laps, and then he would fall back to like 3rd or 4th in the pack and then be able to, do his thing back up there. And this will be his 3rd start, and his rookie year he qualified 4th, and last year he qualified 3rd. So he could, even if he just goes up one more, so his first 3 starts could be a 4th, a 3rd, and a 2nd. So he's a great qualifier there, and obviously like the ECR cars are always really good there.
Always.
Always. Yeah. The laps led per start you mentioned, Tim, I think down here. And the reason why I added that was I was talking to another guy that knows a ton about the history, and I wanted to kind of quantify dominance in a way. So like numerically, is there a way to have a number that can show dominance? So, so when you look at like Bill Vukovich, like obviously was dominant in all of his starts for the most part. So in a way that can show dominance, but it helps people. Oh no, I'm on the wrong column. Yeah. So if you look at this laps led per start column, and then with their starts, obviously any bigger numbers over here are really impressive. So Ralph De Palma, Emerson Fittipaldi, anybody with a double digit start over here, in my opinion, while also having a really high laps led per start, can show almost like dominant. So if you look at Dario, he had 10 starts, and on average, he led 32.9 laps in each start, which doesn't sound like a lot, especially when you hear numbers where, like where a driver led 198 to 200. Like Ralph De Palma famously led, I think it was 198, and then broke down on like 199. So it's really interesting. And Emerson Fittipaldi shows up there too, obviously. But like that, Bill
my
Vukovich,
favorite of all time, by the way, is Emerson Fittipaldi.
Yeah, I like him.
I'll never forget why I started watching IndyCar. My first IndyCar race that I watched was 1989 Indy 500.
Oh, okay.
And I thought he was just the coolest guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a big fan of him until he didn't drink the milk. And I remember my dad, I was playing in like the backyard after the race, and my dad ran out there, and like literally just opened the door outside and was like, he didn't drink the milk. And I looked at him like, what? Like why would he not drink the milk? And he's like, oh, he owns like an orange juice grove.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, but he was.
Yeah, they were having a fit about that. They kept putting the milk in front of them. They kept putting the milk out.
Yeah.
They kept like, pushing it off.
Yeah. In his defense, though, he did drink it ultimately, but it wasn't on camera, or like it wasn't on TV. So
speaking of the milk, did you know there's 4 different types of milk that a driver can choose from?
I know it's whole, 2% skim, and
chocolate.
No, I don't think that's true.
You don't think that's true?
I don't think that there's no way that IMS would allow someone to hold a glass of chocolate milk in victory lane.
As long as it's milk.
I don't know. Could you imagine that picture? That would be an awkward looking picture.
I know, yeah.
Or if you dump that on you, that wouldn't look good.
No way.
Yeah. So that's some interesting stuff too. Like Wilbur Shaw. Yeah, but I guess back to Dario, his numbers, he's just solid, in 10 starts, but I just can't wrap my brain around the fact that he never took the, checkered flag under green. But if you look at Vukovich, on average, 97 laps led per start, like granted, he only had 5 starts, and I think his first start, he didn't lead any. So really it's 97 laps on average in 4 starts. Just incredibly dominant. Yeah, he didn't lead his first one. He led 4 or 5.
Hey Brian, we got about 6-7 more minutes here to kind of go, but I want to ask your opinion on some of this stuff, because I've heard Tim's opinion quite a bit.
What does that mean?
So we like VK for the poll tomorrow. Well, this weekend, I guess.
Right.
Do you like VK for poll, or who would be your poll?
I do. I do think ECR cars will be strong. I think Andretti cars will kind of struggle, actually. And like Colton Herta, I think even only did a lap and a half today. Mm-hmm. And the conditions tomorrow aren't going to be much different than they were today. I think the Ganassi cars are super strong. But the team, honestly, and, if Spencer's still listening, we were kind of going back and forth about this, about how wrong we are about the Dale Coyne cars. So Sato and, like David Malukas, who I actually predicted, I think, to qualify like 29th. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all if both of those cars are on the front row. They've looked, like consistently strong. Sato put up the fastest lap today at 2:32.790, I think. Yeah. Yeah, so the coin car has been really good, but I still do think that VK will probably get the pole. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if somebody like Sato gets it. And a rookie, David Malukas, could really shock people, and I think have a front row start.
Yeah, that would shock me.
So I'm surprised not to hear Penske up in that. Do you just think they'll be a little too conservative from a setup perspective for the qualifying and say, hey, we're here for the race. We're here to win the whole thing and not just to be on the pole?
Yeah, I do think, the Penske kind of famously goes 3 different directions with 3 different setups and kind of, just has like 3, like bullets in the gun, and whoever comes out on top. So, but they didn't run very much today at all either. And I think that they're pretty confident. Yeah. I mean, I do think they're pretty confident in their setup, but I'd be surprised if there's a Penske on the front row, although I would love to see Will Power get a pole for the 500. I think that'd be an awesome 65th pole for him. It's incredible too. Like his numbers actually on here are pretty impressive. He started, I think, in the top 10 9 years in a row. He led laps like 11 races in a row. So it was just a matter of time before he won in 2018. So but I think Scott McLaughlin could really kind of surprise people too, with it only being his second Indy 500. He's been solid and sounds super confident. But I still got my eye on VK, the coin cars, and the Ganassi cars.
How about winner? You want to throw a winner out there?
Yeah. I'll go with Dixon.
Ooh,
I'll go with Dixon. I think
that would be a nice underscore to a really good career.
Yeah.
Like 2-time Indy 500 winner.
Just for S's and G's, let me throw a number 2 on Dixon's stats here and see where he goes. Real quick, where's he at? There he is.
Spencer, pop in the chat who you think's going to win this thing.
Yeah. So that Dixon moved Dixon to 6th of all time. Who was 5th? Yeah. So, I mean, he's just always there, like, but at the same time, like when Ryan Hunter-Reay was in it, this is obviously his first year that he hasn't had a start in forever, but I always picked Hunter-Reay, always. Like, and he finally won, and then, but I would still pick him. And like, I still to this day thinks that he was the best car in 2016 when Rossi won. And then, like Townsend Bell took him out in pit lane, but but he's just always really solid there. And Dixon's kind of the same way, but that really just kind of goes to show that even with all these numbers and all that, you just never know what's going to happen on race day. Everything needs to go perfect for you. You can't have mistakes. You can't have unlucky things happen. Just an odd caution last year ruined Dixon and Rossi's race. And they were both, at the front. So just everything needs to go good. So I'm not touching Rossi. He's got like the worst luck ever. Especially, like at IMS in the pits. And I think that he can't wait to get away from Andretti. So, so I think it'll be a really awesome race. I hope that the cars can follow each other. I've heard some negative things about that it's kind of hard to pull up in a pack. But
Spencer's
we've heard that.
Taking Pillow.
I could see that for sure.
Yeah.
That's
second last year, right? Second in his second start.
Yeah.
So I foolishly took Graham Rahal before they even turned a wheel for this season.
Yeah. I can see that. I can definitely see that.
Oh, you can?
Not necessarily based on how he's been this week, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, he was in prime, position to be there at the end last year.
He was.
And he's always solid there. And I think at the open test at IMS, he said it was the best car that he's ever driven. So I think maybe, but it was a totally different, obviously, like weather setup and all that. So maybe like the current, weather situation is really kind of wreaking havoc on his car. But he's solid. I think, honestly, I think he's the best racer in the field.
That is the only time I've ever heard that grunt come from Tim ever.
Really?
We've done 30 episodes of this podcast. We talk almost every day.
Yeah.
And that's the first time.
I'm not a believer. You have to show me some stats sometime to say, hey, this is why you believe. where
I can show you
Graham
that.
is.
I can show you that he's a terrible qualifier.
Horrible.
And
Yeah.
invariably, he always moves up. But if you're a terrible qualifier, you're always going to move up,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
How do you think
know.
JJ's going to do, Jimmy Johnson?
I think he's going to really surprise people.
Top 10?
Yes. I think that it almost guaranteed.
Whoa.
Here's a crazy Jimmy Johnson stat, and I actually heard it on Peacock 2 days ago. He has more 500 races under his belt than the other 32 drivers combined. So he knows how to race a 500-mile race. And like what he did today after he like brushed the wall, it was more than a brush, and
it was a good slap.
Turn two. Yeah. And then he came back and stuck it again. I think he's fearless. I think honestly he really wanted to do this for all of his life, and so I think he's going to take full advantage of it. He's got the maturity. I think the Ganassi team has the best cars. He's got the 500-mile race experience. I think he'll actually, it wouldn't surprise me if he won it. But I definitely think he'll get a top 10. I think he'll qualify top 10. I think he'll finish top 10. I think he'll do really good.
Hey,
so I have a question, if that's all right, Dan. Can I ask a
absolutely
question?
Go ahead. Your show, Tim.
You always say that to me. Out of anybody in the field, and who would be best for the series in general to win the Indy 500 this year? Like, what would be the best driver to come and take victory and elevate the series to another level and continue the upward movement of it? We talk about VK's got a great shot at it. We talk about Jimmy possible, you guaranteeing a top 10. What headline would make the best for the Indy 500 as a winner coming out of this year's Indy 500? And some people would say it could be Elio, right? Winning number 5, maybe the first 5-time winner that anybody's seen. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that sort of topic.
Yeah, there's a couple of names that kind of pop in my head. From a global standpoint, I think it'd be easy to say if like Grosjean won it. I think a lot of maybe diehard IndyCar fans wouldn't necessarily like that, but from a global standpoint, I think that there's no doubt that his win would have the biggest global impact. Somebody like Jimmy Johnson, a 7-time NASCAR champion with his massive following and commercial reach, I think would be huge too. Mm-hmm. But I'm also a big fan that I don't ever want a rookie to win. And I think you have to kind of pay your dues a little bit. So I think both of those guys need to do that. And I think they will. So I think Elio winning his 5th would obviously be massive. And I think the crowd would be behind that. I'm kind of old school though, too. I kind of have the Robin Miller mentality about a lot of things. But I would like to see, a name win it, like a Rahal or an Andretti or
I like it in that order too.
Yeah, right. So so I think there's a lot that would have a lot of impact, but it's just all good for the series. The series has almost never been as healthy as it has been, at least since the split. So there's a lot of guys that I think would be really good impact for the livelihood of IndyCar for sure.
Yeah.
The race itself, but you never know till race day, and the race is always, and the track picks the winner. So
you could be on the pole and spin out on the parade lap and never take a green flag, right? We've seen that happen.
Anything can happen there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let me give you an obscure question. So who's the most overlooked past champion at Indianapolis?
Great question. Great question.
It is a good question.
If you go back, like the guys that I learned the most about were guys like Billy Arnold, Bill Holland, that I didn't know a whole lot about. Obviously, Wilbur Shaw was unreal. Louis Meyer, the first 3-time winner. So that's a good question. Most overlooked.
So I'm going to give you a name.
Okay.
Kenny Breck.
Yeah. Very much forgotten. Yeah.
Very accomplished.
Yeah.
In IRL and in Champ Car.
Yeah.
And then when he went away, he went away.
Yeah, well, he got that. He was in that nasty wreck that basically ended his
Texas.
career.
Yep.
Yeah, I could see that one for sure.
Yeah.
There is a bit of me that, so I can name. I don't want to put myself on the spot, but I've been trying to get myself to memorize every winner from 1911 till now. I can go back. I can do 60 to now relatively easily. But every time I do it, when I go to from like 98 to like 03 or 05 is like a blur. Like, so guys like Kenny Brack and like Buddy Rice in 2004, like Buddy Lazier in 96.
Buddy Lazier, yeah, I was thinking of that too. Yeah.
So
Buddy Rice was on the broadcast yesterday, I think it
was. He?
Yeah.
I think he still spots. I don't know who he spots for, but he was
Dryer and Reinbold. So one of those guys, because he was wearing a DNR shirt.
Oh, really? Cool. Yeah. He's kind of under the radar, I would say. Sam Hornish Jr., I think if he would have stayed, he could have been a multi-time winner. He was a beast.
One team though. Penske.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It always helps when you're with the best team for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Hornish. I would love to ask Sam Hornish, directly. Do you regret that at all?
Yeah,
leaving open wheel and going to NASCAR. I'm sure his bank account doesn't regret it. Yeah, I think he probably could have stayed in IndyCar and probably made a terrific career and just been dominant.
Yeah, I actually heard him on a podcast. I forget what podcast it was, not too long ago, but like to me, like at least in my recollection, like when he was in IndyCar, I wasn't a huge fan, but I just thought he had no personality. It was like super bland, like just kind of blah blah blah, like straight out of the box type of deal.
Yeah.
But on this podcast, he sounded happier than ever. He was talking about he's got like 4 kids now. Like he's back in like Defiance, Ohio. But like he just like hardly ever comes back to the track. Like he's just kind of been he's just an anomaly almost, like of a human. So
the family business, right? It's trucking,
right?
Like
I think family. So.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's been a pleasure. I'll give you the last, or you know what? Let me throw it to Tim since he joined us late because he probably has some more things he wants to talk about. But I'll throw it back to you guys for the last couple of comments here.
All right, sounds good. All right,
yeah,
thanks.
I've got my dogs barking in the background. They've been
doing
their thing a little bit here, but we talked a little bit about who would make an impact on a victory, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, Brian, when you talked about Ray Hall, or you talk about Andretti. Like that would be something to see for sure, and it'd be a great headline, and it goes back to the old school things. I'm with you on the 98 to 2005 kind of a blur. I like it, I followed it somewhat, but not a ton. But I love the stats. I love what you put together here. I love the insight that you have on Twitter. So those folks that are out there, please make sure they follow Brian, because you got a lot of good stuff here. And, I don't have any further questions from my end, but I do appreciate you coming on the show and hanging out with us.
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciate you guys inviting me on. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully we can do something like this again soon.
Great stuff, man. You did a lot of work here. Be sure to follow Brian at 500 Indy 1911. Really good stuff, great stats. And, hopefully we'll get somebody added to this board in just 8-9 days time. So
yeah,
we'll see who that is. But hey, thanks for checking in, Brian. We appreciate it. We hope you'll come back and see us again sometime, and
I definitely will anytime.
Updates. So
I will.
But hey, it's been a pleasure. So thank you so much, and thanks for everybody out there who checked in with us. Appreciate it.